Hey guys, and tonight we're going to step back in time to an age of glittering stars and shadowy alchemy, of kings and comets, and of a man whose ambition was as vast as the night sky itself. Imagine for a moment that you are standing on a remote island in the cold Danish Sea. The wind whips a salty spray against your face, but you barely notice. Your gaze is fixed upwards, through the lens of a colossal brass instrument of your own design, a device so precise it feels less like metal and more like an extension of your own eye. You are mapping the heavens with a rigor no one has ever attempted before, charting the silent, clockwork dance of the planets. But you are also a man of immense contradictions, a nobleman with a prosthetic nose, an astronomer who consults a court jester, a scientist who dabbles in the search for eternal life. This is a world of opulent feasts and sudden, violent duels, of royal favor and bitter exile. It's a life of staggering genius and equally staggering arrogance. And to be perfectly honest, you probably wouldn't survive this. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what we do here. We love seeing where our stories travel, so feel free to post your city or country and the local time in the comments below. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for some gentle, ambient hum, and let's settle in together for tonight's journey. You are born into a world that feels both ancient and on the cusp of something new. It's 1546, and the air in Denmark is thick with the legacy of medieval knights and the burgeoning ambition of the Renaissance. Your family, the Brahes, are what you might call old money, a pillar of the Danish nobility, woven into the very fabric of the kingdom's power structure. Your father, Otto Brahe, is a privy councillor, a man who whispers advice into the king's ear. Your mother, Beate Bile, hails from an equally powerful clan, one known for producing high-ranking churchmen and statesmen. You are, by every definition, born with a silver spoon in your mouth, though you'd probably prefer it were made of gold. From your earliest days at Knudstorp Castle, your family's sprawling estate in Scania, you are surrounded by the trappings of power, tapestries depicting heroic battles, conversations about land treaties held over lavish dinners, and the constant subtle pressure to become a great man. But what kind of great man? Your family assumes your path is set. Law, politics, perhaps a military command. Something respectable. Something that serves the crown and, by extension, the Brahe family name. Your uncle, Jürgen Brahe, is a key figure in this early chapter of your life. He and his wife are childless, and they have an arrangement with your parents. It is a strange and slightly unsettling pact. They are to be given one of your father's sons to raise as their own. When your twin brother dies at birth, your parents renege on the deal. But when you are born, and a younger brother follows, Jürgen decides to take matters into his own hands. In a move that feels straight out of a dramatic play, he effectively kidnaps you. One day you are at Knudstorp, the next you are being whisked away to Tostrup Castle. Your parents protest, of course, but not too loudly. This is the 16th century, and family ties are complicated, often transactional. Jürgen is a wealthy and influential vice-admiral. Having you as his heir isn't the worst thing that could happen. Historians still debate the emotional toll of this event, whether you felt abandoned or simply traded from one luxurious setting to another. For your part, you adapt. You are a Brahe, and adapting is what you do. You grow up under Jürgen's care, receiving the finest education a young nobleman could hope for. You learn Latin, the universal language of scholarship, becoming so fluent you can compose poetry in it. You study rhetoric, the art of persuasive speaking, a skill essential for navigating the treacherous currents of court life. You are groomed to be a statesman, a chancellor, a man who shapes nations with words and laws. But then, something happens. On August 21st, 1560, a total solar eclipse is predicted to occur. It's a widely publicized event, and at the University of Copenhagen, where you are a precocious 13-year-old student. The buzz is palpable. When the day arrives and the moon slides perfectly across the face of the sun, plunging the afternoon into an eerie twilight, you are not just impressed. You are fundamentally changed. It's not the event itself that captivates you, but the prediction. The fact that men, mere mortals, could look at numbers and charts and know the future movements of the celestial spheres. It seems like a form of divine power. It feels more real, more potent than any law or political treaty. You purchase an ephemeris, a book of astronomical tables, and a copy of Ptolemy's Almagest, the ancient Bible of astronomy. You begin your own secret studies, staying up late, long after your tutors believe you are asleep, your mind not on legal codes, but on the vast, silent cosmos. This is your first secret, the first sign of the celestial obsession that will come to define you. It's a rebellion, not of anger, but of passion. You are supposed to be looking at earthly matters of state, but your eyes and your soul are turning towards the stars. Your Uncle Jurgen, bless his ambitious heart, doesn't quite know what to make of this burgeoning astronomical hobby. It's unseemly. A nobleman should be studying law, not staring at the sky like a common soothsayer. To steer you back onto the correct path, he sends you on a grand tour of Europe, the 16th century equivalent of a study abroad program designed to polish a young man's credentials. In 1562, you arrive at the University of Leipzig, ostensibly to study law. Your uncle even sends along a tutor, Anders Skrensen-Vettel, a man tasked with the impossible job of keeping your nose in the law books and out of the star charts. You can almost picture the scene, Vettel, earnest and weary, trying to explain the finer points of jurisprudence, while you secretly calculating the conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn. It's a comedic mismatch. You buy astronomical instruments with your allowance, hiding them from your tutor. You spend your nights on rooftops, shivering in the German air, taking measurements with a crude cross staff, your breath pluming in the darkness. This is where your obsession with accuracy begins. You observe the Great Conjunction of 1563, and you notice something deeply troubling. The existing astronomical tables, the Alphonsine tables, based on Ptolemy's model, and the Prutenic tables, based on Copernicus's newer, heliocentric one, are both wrong. Not just slightly off, but wrong by a matter of days. This offends your sense of order. How can humanity understand its place in the universe if its very maps of that universe are flawed? It is like trying to navigate the globe with a map that shows a giant sea monster where America should be. This is a common historical fact. Your early observations revealed the inadequacies of all existing astronomical models, setting the stage for your life's work. You realize that before any grand theory of the cosmos can be proven, someone needs to do the grunt work. Someone needs to create a comprehensive, stunningly accurate catalog of the stars and planets, a new foundation upon which all future astronomy can be built. Your travels continue. You study in Wittenberg, Rostock, and Basel. You are no longer just a student. You are a collector of knowledge, and more importantly, a networker. You meet scholars, instrument makers, and fellow astronomers. You absorb everything. In Augsburg, you collaborate with wealthy merchants who share your passion, and together you commission a marvel of engineering, the Augsburg Quadrant. This isn't some handheld device you can hide from your tutor. It's a 19-foot-tall wooden quadrant, so large it requires a team of men to operate. It's inlaid with brass and features a transversal sighting system that allows for unprecedented accuracy. You spend your nights with this wooden giant, meticulously recording positions, your hands growing calloused, your mind buzzing with data. A weird little-known tidbit from this period is the sheer physicality of your work. We imagine astronomers as serene figures at a telescope, but your early work was more like construction or heavy engineering. You were wrestling with massive wooden and metal structures in the cold, a far cry from the quiet contemplation one might associate with stargazing. It's a hands-on, physically demanding job, and you love it. Then, in 1565, a letter arrives. It carries grim news. Your Uncle Jurgen, the man who kidnapped you and set you on this path, is dead. The story is both tragic and absurdly heroic. King Frederick II had fallen off a bridge into the icy waters of a canal near his castle in Copenhagen. Jurgen, ever the loyal subject, jumped in to save him. The king survived, but your uncle developed a fatal case of pneumonia. You are now the heir to his fortune. You must return to Denmark. The grand tour is over. You return not as a lawyer or a statesman, but as something far stranger, a nobleman with an international reputation as a brilliant, if eccentric, astronomer. Your family still doesn't get it. They see your passion as a bizarre and slightly embarrassing distraction from your noble duties. Is this a fitting pursuit for a man of your station? They ask, their voices dripping with disapproval. They want you to manage your estates, to marry well, to take your rightful place at court. But you've tasted the infinite, and the finite world of Danish politics now seems terribly small. Historians still debate whether your family's disapproval was a source of genuine pain for you, or if you wore their confusion as a badge of honor, a sign of your singular genius. You dabble in another fashionable pursuit of the era to placate them: alchemy. You set up a laboratory, hoping to discover the secrets of transmutation and perhaps the elixir of life. It's a pursuit that combines chemical science with mystical philosophy, making it slightly more palatable to your peers than just stargazing. It's a compromise, a way to be a scientist in a world that doesn't quite have a word for what you are. But every night, when the alembics and beakers are put away, you sneak out, your eyes drawn inexorably upward to the cold, clear, star-dusted sky. You are back in Denmark, a man of independent means, but also a man adrift. The pressure from your family is immense. You are expected to behave like a Brahe, which means less time in the laboratory and more time at courtly functions. And so you attend. You go to weddings, feasts, and endless social gatherings. It is at one such event, an engagement party for one of your cousins in late 1566, that your life takes another sharp, painful turn. The halls are filled with the usual cacophony of nobility. Loud boasts, louder laughter, and a free-flowing river of wine. You, never one to shy away from an argument or a drink, find yourself in a heated dispute with your third cousin, another Danish nobleman named Mandrup Parsberg. The subject of the argument is, of all things, mathematics. You, with your European education and burgeoning astronomical fame, believe yourself to be the superior mathematician. Parsberg, equally proud and perhaps equally inebriated, disagrees. The argument, fueled by wine and ego, escalates. Insults are exchanged. Honor is besmirched. In the rigid code of the 16th century nobility, there is only one way to settle such a dispute: a duel. A few days later, on a cold, dark evening in Rostock, you and Parsberg meet. There are no seconds, no referees, just the two of you, armed with swords, ready to settle a mathematical debate with sharpened steel. It's a profoundly illogical way to determine who is better at logic. A joke you might appreciate in a quieter moment. But right now, adrenaline and anger are in control. The duel is fought in near total darkness. You can hear the whistle of the blade, the frantic shuffle of feet on the frozen ground, the ragged sound of your own breathing. Then there is a flash of searing pain across your face. Parsberg's sword has connected. The duel ends abruptly. You haven't lost your life, but you have lost a significant part of your nose. The bridge and the tip are gone. This event becomes a defining part of your public persona. This is the common historical fact everyone knows about you. You are the astronomer with the metal nose. In the aftermath, you commission prosthetics. For everyday use, you have one made of brass. But for special occasions, you have a more impressive model crafted from an alloy of silver and gold. It's a testament to your wealth and your vanity. An obscure but fascinating tidbit is that you reportedly carried a small pot of ointment or paste with you at all times to keep the prosthetic affixed. Imagine the sheer inconvenience of it, the constant, low-grade anxiety that your face might literally fall off at an inopportune moment. It's a strange, intimate detail that humanizes your almost mythical arrogance. You lean into the notoriety of it. The nose becomes a symbol of permanent, glittering reminder of your pride, your combativeness, and your refusal to be ordinary. You retreat from the boisterous world of courtly duels and return to your true passions. You inherit more property and set up a proper base of operations at Heravad Abbey, a former monastery your father had been granted. Here, you build a real laboratory, not just for astronomy, but for alchemy as well. The two pursuits in your mind are not separate. Both are attempts to decode the hidden language of God One, written in the stars, the other in the elements of the earth. You spend a fortune on books, chemical apparatus, and a staff of assistants. You are attempting to make medicines, perfect dyes, and yes, still chasing the philosopher's stone, the legendary substance that could turn base metals into gold. Historians still debate the extent of your genuine belief in practical alchemy versus its use as a cover for your more esoteric scientific work. Was it a sincere quest for mystical knowledge, or a clever way to justify your massive expenditures on what was essentially a scientific research institute? Whatever the motivation, your work is prodigious. You are building a reputation, not just as an observer of the heavens, but as a master of the terrestrial arts as well. But the disfigurement has changed you. Perhaps it has hardened you, or perhaps it has simply reinforced your belief that you are a man set apart, marked by destiny and by a cousin's sword for a life less ordinary. The sky offers a perfection and a mathematical certainty that the messy, violent world of men cannot. And so you turn to it with even greater fervor, your strange, metallic nose gleaming in the faint light of the stars you seek to understand. The year is 1572, and you are living a relatively settled life at Heravad Abbey. Your alchemical laboratory is bubbling away, producing various medicines and tinctures that are gaining you a reputation as a skilled physician. You've even fallen in love, though in a way that once again defies the strict conventions of your class. Her name is Kirsten Jurgensdatter, the daughter of a local Lutheran minister. She is a commoner. According to Danish law, if you were to formally marry her, you would forfeit your noble privileges and estates. Your children would not be considered legitimate heirs to the Brahe name. So, you don't formally marry. Instead, you enter into a morganatic marriage, a cohabitation recognized by the church and society as a lifelong commitment, but one that preserves your noble status. It's a pragmatic solution, a loophole in the rigid social structure. Kirsten becomes your partner in life, managing your household, and eventually bearing you 8 children. It's a quiet, domestic rebellion against the expectations of your clan. But on the evening of November 11th, your quiet life is shattered by a light in the sky. You are walking home from your alchemical laboratory, your mind probably on distillates and crucibles when you look up. There, in the familiar constellation of Cassiopeia, is a star that has no business being there. It is brighter than Venus at its peak, a brilliant, unwavering point of light visible even during the daytime. You are stunned. You know the heavens as well as you know the back of your own hand. You know every star in that patch of sky. This one is new. Your first thought is that your eyes are deceiving you. You call over your assistants. You ask nearby peasants, "Do you see it too?" They all do. It's real. This is not a comet. It has no tail. It is not a planet. It doesn't move relative to the other stars. It is a new star, a stella nova. This is a universe-shattering discovery. The common historical understanding, inherited from Aristotle and Ptolemy, was that the heavens were perfect and unchanging. The sphere of the fixed stars was supposed to be eternal, immutable. Comets and other transient phenomena were believed to be atmospheric events, occurring below the orbit of the moon in the sublunary sphere, the realm of change and decay. But this new star is clearly in the realm of the supposedly changeless stars. You know this because you measure its parallax, the apparent shift in its position when viewed from different locations. Over the coming months, you use your finest instruments to observe the star with obsessive precision. You find it has no discernible parallax, meaning it must be incredibly far away, far beyond the moon, residing among the fixed stars themselves. The celestial spheres are not immutable. The ancient wisdom is wrong. The sky can change. This is your first major publication, De Nova Stella, on the new star, which you write in 1573. It makes you an overnight sensation across Europe. You are no longer just a talented Danish nobleman. You are the man who broke the heavens. The book is a masterpiece of observational science. It methodically demolishes the old arguments, proving with cold, hard data that the new star, what we now know, was a type Ia supernova, was a celestial, not an atmospheric event. This solidifies your reputation as the greatest observational astronomer of your age. An obscure tidbit related to De Nova Stella is that you were initially hesitant to publish. In your social class, publishing was something that grubby professional scholars did, not high-born gentlemen. It was considered a bit common. You were eventually persuaded by your friends, who argued that such a monumental discovery had to be shared with the world. You even included astrological predictions and poetry in the book, a nod to the era's blending of what we now see as separate disciplines. King Frederick II of Denmark is immensely impressed. He is a patron of the arts and sciences, and he sees in you a national treasure, a Danish genius who can bring glory to his kingdom. He begins to shower you with favors. First, he offers you a canonry at a cathedral, which comes with a handsome income, but no religious duties. Essentially, a royal grant to fund your work. But the king has a much grander vision. He wants to keep you in Denmark. You had been considering moving to Basel, in Switzerland, to set up a permanent observatory. The king cannot allow his star astronomer to leave, so he makes you an offer you can't refuse. He will give you an entire island, the island of Hen, located in the Risan Strait, between Copenhagen and Elsinore. He will also provide an enormous budget to build the world's most advanced astronomical research institute. Historians still debate the king's primary motivation. Was it a pure love of science, or a calculated political move to create a cultural jewel for his court that would outshine all others in Europe? Whatever the reason, you accept. You are about to be given your own kingdom, a kingdom dedicated to the stars. You arrive on the island of Fen in 1576, and it is effectively a blank slate. It's a small, windswept piece of land, home to about 50 families of farmers and fishermen. To them, you are their new feudal lord, a figure of immense and slightly terrifying power. To you, Ven is the foundation upon which you will build a temple to science. The king's generosity is staggering. He provides not just the land, but a colossal sum of money, equivalent to a significant percentage of the entire state budget. This is not just a grant, it is a national investment. And you, with your boundless ambition and meticulous eye for detail, are the perfect man to spend it. You begin construction immediately on your primary residence and observatory, a building you will name Uraniborg, the Castle of the Heavens. Uraniborg is not just a building, it is a statement. It is a Renaissance palace designed from the ground up for scientific research. It's built in the Flemish style, a striking red brick structure with onion dome towers and ornate gables. It is a fusion of art and science, beauty and function. The ground floor contains your alchemical laboratories, a library, and living quarters for you, Kirsten, and your growing family. The upper floors house the astronomical instruments, situated on sturdy balconies and in domed observatories that can be opened to the sky. The entire structure is oriented perfectly with the cardinal directions. It's a marvel of architecture and engineering, a place designed to impress visitors as much as it is to introduce data. You are the lord of this castle, a veritable Pope of astronomy, as one contemporary called you. You live in opulent style. You have your own printing press to publish your findings, your own paper mill, and even a sophisticated system of intercom speaking tubes to communicate between different parts of the castle. Life on Ven is a strange mix of feudal lordship and cutting-edge science. You are the absolute ruler of the island. You collect rents from the tenant farmers. You administer justice in your own court, and you demand corvée labor unpaid work from the locals to help build and maintain your facilities. This, predictably, does not make you popular with the residents. They see you as a harsh and demanding master, and your relationship with them is often strained. But inside the walls of Uraniborg, you are creating a scientific utopia. You gather a team of students and assistants from all over Europe, creating the first true community of professional researchers. They work in shifts, taking observations every single clear night. A relentless, systematic program of data collection that has never been attempted before. You also keep a court, just like a king. An interesting and well-known character from this court is your jester, a dwarf named Jepp. According to your own accounts, you believed Jepp was a clairvoyant and would have him sit under the table during meals, occasionally feeding him morsels. He would mutter seemingly random phrases that you sometimes interpreted as prophecies. It is a bizarre detail that highlights the contradictions of your character, the hyper-rational scientist who measures the sky with minute precision, and the superstitious nobleman who consults a psychic jester. As your fame grows, so does the scale of your operation. Uraniborg, magnificent as it is, proves to be too susceptible to the wind, which can vibrate the sensitive instruments and throw off your measurements. So you build a second observatory, St. Uraniborg, the Castle of the Stars. This one is even more ingenious. To protect the instruments from the wind and thermal fluctuations, you build most of it underground. The observatories are sunken chambers, connected by tunnels, with only the instruments themselves poking up above ground level through sliding shutters. It looks like something from a science fiction story. It's here that you install your greatest creations, the great equatorial armillary, the revolving wooden quadrant, the mural quadrant. These are not telescopes. The telescope has not yet been invented. They are massive, naked-eye instruments, brass and steel behemoths designed for measuring angles with astonishing accuracy. One of the weirder tidbits from your life on Ven is your menagerie of pets, which included a tame elk. This elk would apparently follow you around like a dog. Tragically, the story goes that during a visit to a nobleman in Landskrona, the elk wandered into the castle, drank a large quantity of beer, fell down a staircase, and died. It's a darkly comedic story that adds another layer of eccentricity to your legend. Historians still debate how much of the scientific work on Henen was done by you personally versus your team of assistants. While you were undoubtedly the visionary and the final arbiter of the data, the sheer volume of observations suggests a highly organized, collaborative effort, making Uraniborg St. Uraniborg a true forerunner of the modern research institute. For 20 years, under the benevolent gaze of King Frederick II, Ven is the undisputed center of the scientific world. You are at the absolute peak of your power, a king on your own island, unlocking the secrets of the cosmos, one meticulous measurement at a time. At the heart of your kingdom on Ven lies a profound intellectual puzzle. You have the best data in the world, data that clearly shows the ancient Ptolemaic system, with the Earth at the center of everything, is wrong. Your observations of the 1572 supernova and a great comet in 1577 have proven that the heavens are not immutable, and that celestial bodies can and do travel through the supposedly solid. crystalline spheres. The comet of 1577 was particularly damning for the old model. By measuring its parallax, you demonstrated conclusively that it was not an atmospheric phenomenon, but was moving through the region of the planets, far beyond the moon. If there were solid spheres, the comet would have shattered them. So Ptolemy is out. But you are not ready to embrace the alternative proposed by Copernicus, which places the sun at the center of the universe. Your rejection of the Copernican model isn't born of ignorance. You are one of the few people alive who truly understands the mathematics of it. Your objections are twofold, based on the best evidence available to you at the time. Your first objection is based on physics. If the Earth were truly hurtling through space and spinning on its axis, you argue, surely, we would feel it. A ball dropped from a tall tower should land far to the west of the tower's base, as the Earth rotates away beneath it. This was before Galileo and Newton would develop the concepts of inertia and gravity to explain these phenomena. It's a common-sense argument, and in the 16th century, it was a powerful one. Your second objection is based on your own unparalleled observations. If the Earth orbits the Sun, then the fixed stars should exhibit a detectable stellar parallax. They should appear to shift their positions slightly as the Earth moved from one side of its orbit to the other. You point your magnificent instruments at the stars, night after night, searching for this shift, and you find nothing. The stars do not move. You conclude, quite logically, that either the Earth is stationary or the stars are so mind-bogglingly far away that their parallax is too small for even your state-of-the-art equipment to detect. You find the latter possibility to be an absurd violation of divine economy. Why would God create such an incomprehensibly vast, empty space between the orbit of Saturn and the nearest stars? It seemed wasteful dot, so you find yourself in a scientific no man's land. Ptolemy is wrong. Copernicus is wrong. What's a genius astronomer to do? You invent your own system. This is your great theoretical contribution to cosmology, the Tychonic system. It is a brilliant, if ultimately incorrect, compromise. In your model, the Earth remains the stationary center of the universe. The sun and the moon orbit the Earth. And this is the clever part, all the other planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, orbit the sun. It is a hybrid model, mathematically equivalent to the Copernican system in its predictions of planetary positions. But without the baggage of a moving Earth, it preserves the common-sense physics of a stationary Earth while accounting for the observational evidence, like the phases of Venus and the fact that Mercury and Venus always stay close to the sun. This system becomes hugely popular, especially among those who are uncomfortable with the theological implications of demoting the Earth from its central position. It is, for a time, the leading cosmological model in the world. An obscure but telling detail about the Tychonic system is that you were not technically the first to propose it. A few decades earlier, the German mathematician Paul Wittich sketched out a similar geoheliocentric model, and you may have been aware of his work. Historians still debate the extent of Wittich's influence on your thinking. Did you independently conceive of the same idea, or did you refine and popularize a concept that was already floating in the scholarly ether? This priority dispute was a source of bitter controversy later in your life. Regardless, it is your name that becomes forever associated with the model, thanks to your observational data that backed it up and your magnificent publishing operation on Venn. The popular fact is that you proposed a third, way between Ptolemy and Copernicus. You spend years at Uraniborg and St. Cherbourg, not just collecting data, but trying to fit it all into this elegant cosmic scheme. Your star catalog grows to over 1,000 stars, all charted with a precision that would not be surpassed for more than a century. You are the master of data, the king of the cosmos, confident that your model represents the true architecture of The heavens. You are at the center of your own universe on Even, just as you believe the earth is at the center of the actual one. For now, your position seems as unshakable as the ground beneath your feet. For 21 years, your life on Ven is an almost perfect fusion of power, wealth, and scientific productivity. You are the lord of the island, a celebrity scholar, and the confidant of a king. But your world is built on a foundation of one, man's favor, and in April 1588, that foundation cracks. Your patron, King Frederick II, dies unexpectedly. His successor is his son, Christian IV, who is only 11 years old. A regency council of nobles is appointed to rule Denmark until the young king comes of age. And this is where your problems begin. You, with your famous arrogance and your special relationship with the old king, have not spent much time cultivating friendships among the other powerful nobles. In fact, you have alienated many of them. You have treated them with intellectual disdain, and they have long resented your enormous, state-funded budget and your feudal control over HEVN. The new Regency Council is not nearly as enamored with your celestial pursuits as Frederick had been. They start to look at the royal accounts, and the line item for astronomer on an island is alarmingly large. They begin to chip away at your privileges. First, they cut your funding. Then they challenge your legal authority over the residents of Heven, who have been complaining for years about your harsh rule and exorbitant demands. You are ordered to repair the local chapel and pay the clergy appropriately, duties you had apparently neglected in your single-minded focus on the stars. You, in your typical fashion, react not with diplomacy, but with indignation. You feel you are being persecuted by lesser men who are jealous of your genius. You write haughty, demanding letters to the council, which only serves to further alienate them. It's like watching a modern celebrity have a meltdown on social media. You just can't seem to stop making things worse for yourself. One of the most damaging episodes involves a man named Peter Vock, a fellow nobleman who had arranged for his sister to be betrothed to your sister, Sophia Brahe. Sophia was a brilliant woman in her own right, a skilled horticulturist, chemist, and your frequent assistant in astronomical observations. However, you refused to pay the dowry you had promised, leading to a bitter and very public falling out. This feud with a powerful family further isolates you at court. The popular historical narrative is that your fall from grace was swift and total once your patron died. But in reality, it was a slow, painful decline over nearly a decade. A more obscure tidbit is the nature of the complaints from the Fen residents. They weren't just about money or labor. Some were quite specific. You had apparently imprisoned some tenants without due process, and had even flogged one of your own servants, a story that shocked the council. It painted a picture of you not just as a demanding landlord, but as a tyrant. When Christian IV finally comes of age in 1596 and takes the throne, you probably hope for a return to the good old days. You and the young king had been on friendly terms. But Christian IV is a different kind of ruler than his father. He is pragmatic, focused on military and economic matters, and he has been listening to the Regency Council's complaints for years. He visits Ven, and he is reportedly not impressed. Perhaps he saw an arrogant old man living in luxury on state funds, producing star charts that had little immediate practical value. The final straw comes in 1597. The king formally revokes your main source of income, the revenue from a large estate in Norway, and effectively shuts down your operation. The message is clear. The party is over. You are heartbroken and furious. You see this as a betrayal of your life's work and an insult to science itself. In a grand, dramatic gesture, you decide to go into self-imposed exile. You pack up some of your smaller, portable instruments, your precious manuscript data, and your printing press. You leave your magnificent castles, Uraniborg and St. Chernoborg, to the wind and the sea. You abandon the great mural quadrant, too large to move, on the wall of its sunken observatory. It is a tragic moment. The greatest scientific institute in the world is being shuttered due to politics and personal animosity. Historians still debate whether you could have saved your position with a little humility. If you had been more diplomatic, more willing to compromise with the new regime, could you have kept him? Or was the clash between your proud, uncompromising nature and the new political reality simply inevitable? You leave Denmark in 1597, first for Rostock, then for a castle near Hamburg, a fallen king looking for a new kingdom. Your great secret, the treasure trove of celestial data, is now your only real asset, your bargaining chip in a world that has suddenly turned cold. You are now a scientist for hire, a wandering scholar in search of a new patron. You are in your early 50s, past the prime of your life, but you still possess the most valuable scientific commodity in Europe, 2 decades worth of unparalleled astronomical data. This is your leverage. You send out feelers to various courts, advertising your skills and, more importantly, your treasure trove of observations. You write a lavishly illustrated book, Astronomia in Strata Mechanica, Instruments for the Restored Astronomy, which is essentially a glossy catalog of your work on heaven. It showcases your magnificent instruments, the architecture of Uraniborg and St. Chernoborg, and your Tychonic model of the cosmos. It's a resume, a sales pitch, and a monument to your lost kingdom, all rolled into one. You send copies to all the major rulers of Europe, including the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II. In Prague, Rudolf II is the perfect potential patron. He is a Habsburg emperor, but he is not a typical ruler. He is reclusive, melancholic, and deeply obsessed with the occult, alchemy, and astronomy. His court in Prague is a magnet for artists, intellectuals, alchemists, and mystics from across the continent. It's a place where science and magic bleed into one another, a perfect environment for a man of your particular and peculiar talents. Rudolf is intrigued by your pitch. He sees in you a kindred spirit, and more importantly, a source of immense prestige. To have the great Tycho Brahe as his imperial mathematician would be a major coup, cementing Prague's status as the intellectual capital of Europe. In 1599, the invitation arrives. The emperor offers you a generous salary, a castle of your choosing near Prague, and the official title of imperial mathematician. You accept immediately. You pack up your family, your remaining instruments, and your precious data, and make the long journey to Bohemia. You arrive in Prague to a hero's welcome. The emperor fawns over you. You are given Benátky Castle, a magnificent estate outside the city, to set up a new observatory, a new Uraniborg. For a moment, it feels like the glory days have returned. You are once again at the center of a vibrant intellectual court, with the backing of a powerful and enthusiastic monarch. The popular historical image of this period is one of triumphant restoration, but the reality is more complex and tinged with frustration. Benátky Castle is not Ven. It is drafty and ill-suited for the precise work you need to do. Your large instruments, which you had to leave behind in Denmark, are sorely missed. You spend a great deal of time and energy just trying to get your new observatory up and running, wrangling with local craftsmen, and dealing with bureaucratic delays. You are a long way from the absolute control you enjoyed on your island kingdom. It is during this time that a new figure enters your life, a man who will become both your greatest collaborator and your ultimate successor. His name is Johannes Kepler. He is a brilliant, devout, and deeply troubled young German mathematician. He is a staunch Copernican, but his own career has stalled due to his Lutheran faith clashing with the Catholic authorities in Graz, where he was teaching. He is also a mystic, obsessed with finding the divine geometry in the heavens. He has written a book, Mysterium Cosmographicum, which attempts to explain the spacing of the planets using the 5 Platonic solids you have read. His book, and while you disagree with its Copernican premise, you recognize the author's mathematical genius. You need someone with Kepler's skills to help you make sense of your mountain of data, particularly the maddeningly complex orbit of Mars. You need a mathematical workhorse to prove your Tychonic system once and for all. So, you invite Kepler to join you in Prague. The relationship between you and Kepler is one of the most famous and fraught collaborations in the history of science. It's a clash of titans. You are the aging king of observation, lordly, secretive, and proprietary about your data. Kepler is the young, hungry theorist, brilliant but impoverished, and desperate to get his hands on your measurements. A weird tidbit from their early interactions is the sheer tension and mistrust. You don't just hand over the data. You guard it jealously, doling it out in small pieces, terrified that Kepler will use it to prove his own Copernican theory instead of your Tychonic one. You give him the Mars data because it is the most difficult problem, a test of his abilities. Kepler, for his part, feels undervalued and constrained. He complains in his letters about your arrogance and the meager salary you initially pay him. Historians still debate the dynamic of your relationship. Were you a mentor grooming a successor, or a paranoid master trying to exploit a brilliant subordinate? The truth is likely a messy combination of both. You need each other, but you don't fully trust each other. You are two celestial bodies locked in a complex gravitational dance. One, a massive, established planet. The other, a fiery, eccentric comet, both circling the same burning questions about the nature of the universe. The year 1601 finds you living in a grand house in Prague, having relocated from the less-than-ideal Benátky Castle. Your relationship with Kepler remains a delicate dance of collaboration and conflict. He is your indispensable assistant, the only person with the mathematical firepower to tame the wild orbit of Mars and forge your raw data into a final, definitive theory of the cosmos, the Rudolphine tables, named in honor of your patron. You, in turn, are his gatekeeper, the guardian of the data he so desperately needs. You have him working on the problem of Mars, and he is making progress, but the tension is always there, simmering just beneath the surface of courtly politeness. You are the old guard, the master of instruments and observation. He is the new wave, a theoretical purist with a mystical streak. You can almost feel the changing of an era in the air between you. Life in Prague is a whirlwind of imperial duties. You are not just an astronomer. You are Rudolf, the second's official astrologer and alchemist. You cast horoscopes for the emperor, advising him on auspicious days for important decisions. You continue your alchemical experiments, searching for new medicines and always the elusive secret of gold. It's a performance in part. You are playing the role of the Renaissance magus, the wise man who understands both the heavens above and the earth below. The popular view is that you were a scientist shackled by the superstitions of your time, but it's more nuanced than that. For you, there was no sharp line between astronomy and astrology, or between chemistry and alchemy. They were all part of a single, unified quest to understand the hidden order of the universe. On October 13th, you attend a lavish banquet hosted by Peter Vogt, the Baron of Rosenberg. It's a sign of your restored status that you are dining with the highest nobility of Bohemia. You are a long way from the disgraced exile who fled Denmark. During the banquet, you drink copiously, as is the custom. At some point, you feel a pressing need to relieve yourself, but the etiquette of the day is incredibly strict. It is considered a grave insult to leave the table before the host. So you hold it in. You sit there for hours, your bladder screaming, in protest, making polite conversation while your body is in agony. It's a small, absurd point of social decorum, but it will have catastrophic consequences. When you finally get home, you find that you are unable to urinate. The pressure is immense, the pain excruciating. You have suffered a urinary blockage, what we would now likely diagnose as uremia, a condition where the kidneys fail and toxins build up in the blood. The next 11 days are a slow, agonizing decline. You are in constant pain, drifting in and out of delirium. Your family, your assistants, and Kepler are at your bedside. A fascinating and strange tidbit, recorded by Kepler himself, are your last words. In your feverish state, you are said to have repeatedly chanted, "Ne frustra vixis videre," let me not seem to have lived in vain. It is a heartbreakingly poignant summary of your life's ambition. You are terrified that your work will be for nothing, that your decades of meticulous observation, your life's great secret, will be lost. In a moment of lucidity, you bequeath your work to Kepler. You make him promise to use the data to complete the Rudolphine tables, but you implore him to do it within the framework of your Tychonic system, not his own Copernican one. It is your final, desperate attempt to secure your legacy. On October 24th, 1601, at the age of 54, you die. The official cause of death was recorded as a burst bladder. For centuries, this was the accepted story, a bizarre, tragic, but ultimately straightforward medical event. However, the circumstances of your sudden illness and the high-stakes world of Rudolph II's court have led to centuries of speculation. Historians still debate the true cause of your death. Was it really just a polite man's fatal adherence to etiquette? Or was it something more sinister? The theory that you were murdered has persisted for centuries. The primary suspect in these theories is often your own assistant, Johannes Kepler, who had the most to gain from your death: immediate, unfettered access to your complete data set. Another theory points to your cousin Tycho Brahe, who was at the behest of the Danish king Christian IV, who may have wanted to silence you permanently. The weapon? Mercury poisoning. The symptoms of uremia and mercury poisoning delirium, kidney failure, are strikingly similar. Your story, which began with a duel over mathematics, ends in a medical mystery, leaving behind a legacy as complex and debated as the celestial system that bears your name. Your death throws the imperial court into a state of confusion and creates an immediate power vacuum. The most valuable object in the room, more precious than any jewel or title, is your lifetime of astronomical data. It sits there, inbound. Manuscripts and loose papers, a treasure chest of celestial secrets. And the man who holds the key is now Johannes Kepler. But it's not that simple. Your family, led by your son-in-law Franz Tengnagel, believes the data is their rightful inheritance. Tengnagel, a nobleman of some ambition but little scientific talent, sees the data as a valuable asset to be controlled and perhaps sold to the highest bidder. He immediately moves to secure your papers, leading to a tense and dramatic confrontation with Kepler. Kepler, for his part, knows that this is the moment his entire life has been leading up to. He cannot let this data, the key to unlocking the universe, fall into the hands of someone who doesn't understand its significance. The popular narrative often simplifies this moment, suggesting Kepler simply took the data. In reality, it was a messy and legally fraught process. Kepler described it as a violent struggle. He essentially seized the bulk of the observations, arguing that as the new imperial mathematician, a title he quickly secured from Emperor Rudolph II, the data was the property of the emperor, and essential for completing the Rudolphine tables, the project you had started together. It's a high-stakes heist, justified by the noble cause of scientific progress. You could almost picture Kepler, his heart pounding, gathering the precious manuscripts, knowing he is betraying the wishes of your family, but believing he is fulfilling your true scientific destiny. This act of appropriation has been debated for centuries. Historians still debate the ethics of Kepler's actions. Was he a thief who stole a dead man's legacy? Or was he a savior, rescuing priceless scientific knowledge from being locked away or squandered by heirs who didn't appreciate it? Kepler himself seemed to have a conflicted conscience, but he justified his actions by arguing that he was the only one who could make proper use of the treasure. And he was probably right. Without Kepler's mathematical genius, your data would have remained a stunning but ultimately inert collection of numbers. It was the fusion of your observation and his theory that would ignite the next phase of the scientific revolution. A weird tidbit in this whole affair is the sheer disorganization of the data. It wasn't a neat, indexed archive. It was a sprawling collection of logs, notes, and calculations that only someone who had worked alongside you could hope to decipher. Kepler's first task was not analysis, but a massive feat of data organization, a challenge that would take him years. Your body, meanwhile, is given a funeral befitting your status. You are interred with great ceremony in the Tan Church, a magnificent Gothic cathedral in Prague's Old Town Square. Your tomb is a prominent one, a testament to the high esteem in which you were held by the emperor. But even in death, you are not left in peace. The rumors of foul play begin to circulate almost immediately. The theory of mercury poisoning, in particular, gains traction. Mercury was a common component in the alchemical medicines of the day, and it's plausible you could have been self-medicating. But it was also a well-known silent poison. The question of whether it was accidental or deliberate hangs over your legacy. In 1901, on the 300th anniversary of your death, your tomb was opened for the first time. Scientists and historians gathered to examine your remains. They took samples of your hair and beard, remnants of which were still preserved. The analysis was rudimentary by modern standards, but it did find elevated levels of mercury, adding fuel to the murder mystery fire. For the next century, you would rest, but the questions about your final days would only grow louder, echoing in the halls of history, waiting for a time when science could provide a clearer answer. A century passes, then another, and another. Your name, Tycho Brahe, lives on, forever linked with your magnificent observatory, your prosthetic nose, and your unique, transitional model of the cosmos. But the mystery of your death remains azure. Tantalizing footnote, a cold case that refuses to close. The 1901 exhumation and its finding of mercury had planted a seed of doubt that grew into a thicket of conspiracy theories. Was it Kepler, the ambitious understudy? Was it your cousin Eric, acting on orders from the Danish king? Or was it an accident, a self-administered dose of an alchemical remedy gone wrong? The evidence was inconclusive, the whispers persistent. Then, in the early 21st century, a team of Danish and Czech scientists decides that it's time for a definitive answer. Armed with technologies you could only have dreamed of, particle accelerators, scanning electron microscopes, advanced chemical analysis, they petitioned to have your tomb opened once again. In November 2010, after years of planning and navigating bureaucratic hurdles, the moment arrives. In the solemn quiet of Prague's Tan Church, under the glare of television lights, the stone slab over your grave is lifted. The world is watching. It's a surreal fusion of medieval history and modern forensic science. The team, a mix of archaeologists, historians, and physicists, carefully exhumes your remains. It's a delicate operation. They find your bones, fragments of your burial shroud, and most importantly, samples of your hair and beard, which are ideal for testing for poisons. The team transports the samples to state-of-the-art laboratories around the world. The primary goal is to conduct a detailed analysis of the mercury levels in your hair. Hair grows at a relatively constant rate, so by analyzing different segments of a hair strand, scientists can create a timeline of your exposure to certain elements. This is the common historical fact of the 2010 exhumation. Its main purpose was to solve the mercury poisoning mystery once and for all. The analysis is painstaking. They use powerful techniques like particle-induced X-ray emission, PIX, to detect trace elements. The world holds its breath, waiting for the verdict. Will the data finally convict a 400-year-old murderer? The results, when they are finally published a couple of years later, are both a bombshell and an anticlimax. The analysis reveals that, while there were traces of mercury in your hair, the concentrations were not nearly high enough to have been a fatal dose. In fact, the levels fluctuated and were highest weeks before your death, then dropped significantly in your final days. The conclusion is clear. You are not murdered by mercury poisoning. The centuries-old conspiracy theory, the one that implicated Kepler or the Danish crown, is debunked. So if not poison, then what? The scientific team confirms the original diagnosis. You most likely died from a burst bladder and subsequent uremia, the story that had seemed too bizarre to be true, that you died from holding it in at a banquet, turns out to be the most plausible explanation after all. It's a mundane, almost silly end for such a monumental figure. But the 2010 exhumation revealed more than just the cause of your death. It also gave us a treasure trove, weird and wonderful new details about you. One of the most fascinating tidbits came from a chemical analysis of your famous prosthetic nose. A small green residue was found on the skull where the nose would have been. For centuries, the story was that you had two noses, a simple one of copper and a fancy one of silver and gold. But the analysis of this residue found no traces of silver or gold. It was made almost entirely of brass. The conclusion? Your fancy silver and gold nose probably never existed. It was likely a myth, a story you yourself might have encouraged. To enhance your own legend, you were a master of personal branding, even in the 16th century. Historians still debate the full implications of these findings. While the central murder mystery is solved, the analysis opened up new avenues of inquiry into your health, diet, and daily life. The exhumation was not just about how you died. It became a deep dive into how you lived. The final irony is that you, the man who dedicated his life to collecting data to reveal the truth of the heavens, became a source of data yourself. Your own body providing the evidence needed to finally separate fact from fiction. 400 years after your last breath. With the mystery of your death largely settled, the focus shifts back to your true legacy, your data, and what became of it in the hands of Johannes Kepler. After his violent acquisition of your notebooks, Kepler set to work. He was now the imperial mathematician, but the salary was often paid late, and the political situation in Prague was growing increasingly unstable. Despite these challenges, Kepler embarked on an intellectual wrestling match with your data that would last for the better part of a decade. His primary target was Mars. You had assigned him the planet because its orbit was the most troublesome, the one that deviated most obviously from a perfect circle. You believed that if he could just crack Mars, he could fit it into your Tychonic model. Kepler believed it was the key to proving Copernicus. Kepler began his assault on Mars with the standard tools of the time, circles and epicycles. For years, he tried to force your exquisitely precise observations of Mars into a circular orbit, or a combination of circles, as every astronomer since Ptolemy had done. But your data was too good. It was too accurate to allow for sloppy fudging. No matter how he arranged the circles, there was always a tiny, infuriating discrepancy. At its worst, his model disagreed with your observations by an error of 8 arcminutes. An arcminute is 1/60th of a degree. To a layman, it's an impossibly small amount, the width of a human hair seen from across a room. Other astronomers would have dismissed it as an observational error, but Kepler knew you better than that. He trusted your data implicitly. He wrote, If I had believed that we could ignore these 8 minutes, I would have patched up my hypothesis accordingly. But since it was not permissible to ignore, those 8 minutes pointed the road to a complete reformation in astronomy. This is the hinge upon which the scientific revolution pivots. Kepler's refusal to ignore the tiny error is a landmark moment in the history of thought. It represents a fundamental shift. For the first time, a scientific theory was being held to the standard of empirical data, and the data was winning. This is the well-known historical fact. Kepler's work on Mars, using your data, led him to abandon 2 millennia of tradition. Circles had to go. In a leap of creative genius, after years of painstaking calculation, he famously called his work his war with Mars. He tried a different shape, the ellipse, and it worked perfectly. He formulated his first law of planetary motion. Planets move in elliptical orbits with the sun at one focus. This was a radical departure from the perfect, divine circles that had dominated cosmology since the ancient Greeks. Then he formulated his second law. A planet sweeps out equal areas in equal times. This meant that planets speed up when they are closer to the sun and slow down when they are farther away. The clockwork of the heavens was not uniform. A lesser-known tidbit about this process is the sheer mental and emotional toil took on Kepler. His writings from this period are filled with despair, frustration, and moments of ecstatic breakthrough. He personifies the planet, writing of the taming of Mars. He fills his margins with calculations, dead ends, and personal notes. It's not the work of a cold, detached calculating machine, but of a passionate, almost obsessive artist trying to find the hidden beauty in the numbers. His final work on the subject, Astronomia Nova, New Astronomy, published in 1609, is one of the most important scientific books ever written. It lays out his first 2 laws and, crucially, shows all his working, all the wrong turns and failed attempts. It's a revolutionary book, not just for its conclusions, but for its honesty about the messy reality of the scientific process. Historians still debate what you would have thought of Kepler's discovery. Would you have been horrified that he used your data to demolish your own Tychonic system? Or would your deep commitment to observational accuracy have forced you to accept the truth of the ellipses? Some scholars argue that your empirical soul would have ultimately bowed to the evidence. Others believe your ego and your commitment to a stationary Earth would have been impossible to overcome. We will never know. But what is certain is that your legacy was secured in a way you never intended. You thought your data would prove the Earth was the center of the universe. Instead, it provided the evidence that would cement the sun's place at the center and, more importantly, reveal the true mathematical laws that govern the planets. You had lived in vain? Not at all. You had, unknowingly, provided the fuel for a revolution. You were the Moses of astronomy, leading humanity to the edge of the promised land, but never entering it yourself. It was Kepler who crossed the river with your map in his hand. While Kepler was busy revolutionizing cosmology with your Mars data, what became of your physical legacy, the magnificent island kingdom of Hen? After you fled into exile in 1597, Uraniborg and St. Chernoborg fell into a state of rapid decay. Without their master, the buildings became hollow shells, monuments to a bygone era of scientific glory. King Christian IV, the man who had effectively evicted you, had little interest in preserving them as scientific institutions. For a time, the island was leased to various nobles. The delicate instruments you had been forced to leave behind were plundered or left to rust. The great mural quadrant, your masterpiece, was likely dismantled and sold for scrap metal. It's a heartbreaking image, the world's most advanced scientific research center being picked apart like a beached whale dot. Your alchemical laboratory, with its furnaces and glassware, was also abandoned. A strange and persistent local legend. An obscure tidbit of folklore claimed that your alchemical fires continued to burn underground for years after you left, tended by some unseen supernatural force. It's a ghost story, of course, but it speaks to the mythic status you had acquired among the local population, part scientist, part wizard, a man whose presence lingered long after he was gone. The peasants of Hen, who had so resented you, as their feudal lord, now saw the ruins of your castle, and likely felt a different kind of awe. The place was haunted by your genius. Over the next century, nature reclaimed your kingdom. The ornate gardens you had designed, filled with rare medicinal herbs, grew wild. The walls of Uraniborg crumbled. Visitors in the 17th and 18th centuries described a scene of romantic ruin. The French astronomer Jean Picard visited in 1671 to try and re-establish the exact longitude and latitude of your observatory, a testament to how crucial your data points still were. He found only the foundations of Uraniborg and the sunken, earth-filled pits of St. He had to excavate just to find the original locations of your instruments. The popular historical fact is that your observatory was completely destroyed. The island of Fen became a place of pilgrimage for scientists, a place to pay homage to your memory and lament the impermanence of even the greatest human endeavors. The island itself was ceded to Sweden in 1658, and your Danish castle became a Swedish ruin. It wasn't until the 20th century that a serious effort was made to excavate and preserve what was left. Archaeologists uncovered the complete foundations of Uraniborg and St. Cherniborg, revealing the ingenious layout of the buildings and the underground tunnels. They found remnants of your laboratory equipment and everyday items, painting a richer picture of life on the island. Today, Even is a popular tourist destination. The foundations of your observatories have been preserved, and a modern museum stands nearby. A portion of St. Cherniborg has been reconstructed, allowing visitors to descend into the subterranean chambers and imagine what it was like to work there, protected from the wind, with only the stars visible through the open roof. Historians still debate the long-term impact of Uraniborg's destruction. Was it an unmitigated tragedy that set back the course of observational astronomy? Or was its work already done? By the time of its demise, the torch had already been passed. The invention of the telescope in 1608, just a decade after you left, would soon render your naked eye instruments obsolete. In a way, Uraniborg was both the pinnacle of pre-telescopic astronomy and its final glorious gasp. Its purpose was to create the one perfect data set needed to crack the cosmic code, and it succeeded. Once Kepler had your data, the physical institution was no longer strictly necessary for the next leap forward. Your real observatory was never the brick and brass on Ven. It was the numbers, the meticulous record of the heavens that you carried with you into exile. That was the part of your kingdom that was truly indestructible. The island may have fallen into ruin, but the secrets you coaxed from its night sky had been set free, and they were already busy remaking the world. Your influence did not end with Kepler. While he was busy formulating his laws of planetary motion, another giant of science was turning a new invention towards the heavens, Galileo Galilei. The year is 1609. Galileo, a professor in Padua, hears rumors of a Dutch invention, a spyglass that makes distant objects appear closer. He quickly figures out the principles behind it and builds his own, much more powerful versions. When he points his telescope at the night sky, he unleashes a flood of discoveries that will vindicate Kepler's work and provide the physical proof that the old Ptolemaic and even your own Tychonic systems were untenable. Galileo sees mountains and craters on the moon, proving it is not a perfect, ethereal sphere, but a world, much like the Earth. He discovers 4 moons orbiting Jupiter, a miniature solar system that does not revolve around the Earth. This is a direct contradiction to the idea that everything must orbit our planet. He observes the phases of Venus, showing that it cycles from a thin crescent to a full disk, just as Copernicus's model predicted it would if it orbited the sun. This discovery in particular was the nail in the coffin for the Ptolemaic system. The popular historical fact is that Galileo's telescopic observations provided the knockout blow to the geocentric model dot. So where does your Tychonic system fit into this new telescope-driven world? For a while, it actually thrives. Galileo's discoveries definitively killed the old Ptolemaic model, but they didn't, on their own, prove that the Earth itself moved. The Tychonic system, with its stationary Earth and Sun-orbiting planets, was perfectly compatible with the phases of Venus and the moons of Jupiter. In fact, in the wake of Galileo's findings, your model became the preferred choice for many astronomers, especially within the powerful Catholic Church. It offered a way to accept the new observational evidence without challenging the scriptural and philosophical primacy of a stationary Earth. Your hybrid model became the chief rival to the Copernican Keplerian system for much of the 17th century. It was the respectable third way for the cautious intellectual. A more obscure tidbit is the complex intellectual relationship between you, Kepler, and Galileo. They were all contemporaries, but they formed a strange triangular dynamic. You and Kepler had your intense face-to-face collaboration. Galileo and Kepler corresponded, with Kepler enthusiastically supporting Galileo's telescopic findings and sending him a copy of his Astronomia Nova. Galileo, rather strangely, was much more reserved, barely acknowledging Kepler's elliptical laws in his own work. He remained a Copernican of the old school, still believing in perfect circular orbits. And your relationship with Galileo was non-existent, as you died before his major discoveries. Yet, your ghost loomed over everything. Galileo's fight was not just against the old Ptolemaists. It was also against the powerful proponents of your Tychonic system. Historians still debate why Galileo so thoroughly ignored Kepler's laws. Was it professional jealousy? Or did he simply find the idea of non-circular orbits aesthetically unpleasing? Perhaps he felt that adding ellipses to the argument would overcomplicate his primary battle, which was to establish the motion of the Earth. Whatever the reason, it created a strange situation where the best theory of the cosmos, Kepler's laws, and the best observational evidence for a new cosmology, Galileo's telescope, weren't fully integrated for several decades. It would take the next generation of scientists, most notably Isaac Newton, to finally synthesize it all. Newton's law of universal gravitation would provide the physical explanation for why planets move in ellipses, as Kepler had described. Newton himself famously said, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants." You and Kepler were two of the most important of those giants. You built the launch pad with your data. Kepler designed the rocket with his laws. Galileo lit the fuse with his telescope. And Newton sent it all into orbit. Your celestial secret, the raw, unvarnished truth of the planet's movements, recorded night after night on a cold Danish island, had become the bedrock of a new universe. A universe of mathematical laws and infinite spaces. A universe you had meticulously measured, but never fully imagined. So as the stars continue their slow, silent turn overhead, what is your final legacy? How do we sum up a life of such dazzling contradictions? You were a nobleman who worked with his hands, a scientist who believed in prophecy, a rationalist, with a famously short temper. You were a feudal lord and a revolutionary observer. Your name is attached to a cosmological system that was destined for the dustbin of history. Yet your work was the essential catalyst for the very system that replaced it. Your most tangible legacy, of course, is the data. The 1,000-star catalog, the precise tracking of the planets, especially Mars. This was your life's great work, and its value cannot be overstated. Before you, astronomy was largely a theoretical philosophical discipline based on centuries old, often inaccurate observations. You transformed it into a modern, empirical science. You established a new standard for accuracy and rigorous, systematic observation. This is the common historical fact that defines your contribution. You were the master of astronomical data. You demonstrated that progress in science depends not just on brilliant ideas, but on the painstaking, often tedious, work of collecting reliable evidence. Every scientist who has ever spent a long night in a lab, meticulously recording results, is walking in your footsteps. But perhaps your more subtle legacy is the very idea of big science. Uraniborg was not just an observatory. It was a research institute. It was state-funded, international in its staff, and focused on a single massive project. It had its own workshops, printing press, and a dedicated team of specialists. In this, you were a man centuries ahead of your time. You created a model for scientific collaboration that would not become common until the 20th century. CERN, the Hubble Space Telescope Project, the Human Genome Project, all of these massive, collaborative scientific endeavors share a piece of their DNA with your castle of the heavens on the island of Hen. A final, obscure tidbit that encapsulates. Your complex character can be found in your motto, non habere sed esse, which translates to not to seem, but to be. On the surface, it's a noble sentiment, a rejection of superficial appearances in favor of genuine substance. And in your scientific work, you lived by it. You valued the hard reality of data over the elegant appearance of a flawed theory. Yet you were also a man obsessed with appearances. You were vain about your noble lineage. You wore a glittering, prosthetic nose, and you cultivated a larger-than-life public persona. You wanted to be the greatest astronomer, but you also desperately wanted to seem like the greatest astronomer. Historians still debate this central paradox of your personality. Were you a hypocrite, or simply a man who contained multitudes, embodying the shifting values of a world caught between the medieval and the modern? Your life was a performance, but it was a performance in the service of a profound truth. As our story comes to a close, we leave you resting in your tomb in Prague, your physical mysteries finally laid to rest by the very science you helped to. Pioneer, the universe you measured has expanded beyond your wildest comprehension. The fixed stars you charted are now known to be distant suns, trillions of miles away, each potentially with its own family of planets. The comet you proved was a celestial object is now understood as a dirty snowball left over from the formation of the solar system. The supernova you saw flare in Cassiopeia is the ghost of an exploded star, its heavy elements seeding the cosmos with the raw materials for new worlds and for life itself. You did not live in vain. You built a bridge between worlds, between the ancient cosmos of perfect spheres and the modern universe of infinite space and inexorable laws. You did the hard, essential work that allowed others to see further. You collected the secrets, even if you didn't live to hear them all told. And so, the story of the man with the brass nose and the sky full of data comes to a gentle end. The echoes of banquets and duels fade away, leaving only the quiet hum of the cosmos you so loved. The sharp edges of your arrogance and ambition soften with the passage of centuries, smoothed into the grand, sweeping narrative of human curiosity. Feel the weight of your own comfortable blankets, a simple earthly gravity that you insisted was the center of everything. Perhaps in a way, you were right. For each of us, our own small, quiet space is the center of our own universe, a place of rest and dreams. Let the grand, complex orbits of history slow down now, resolving into simple, peaceful stillness. Let go of the names and the dates, the quarrels and the calculations, and just hold on to the image of a single, determined figure, standing on a windy island, looking up into the vast, silent, and star-dusted dark, filled with a sense of wonder, a wonder that now gently cradles you as you drift and fall asleep